Daniel here to bring you the latest fantasy news, and in a quick Daniel update, every single Daniel has been purged from the cast, excluding myself and the original Daniel Green. In an unrelated note, does anyone know where you can bury bodies? Let's go ahead and jump into the news. Previously reported in the last episode of Fantasy News, the Swamp Thing TV show was officially canceled, but now there are rumors stirring that instead a Swamp Thing movie will be coming from DC. The DC universe does need a major change, and they certainly are going that direction with the upcoming Joker movie, and if it does well, a more dark-centered character with smaller origins like Swamp Thing could be a good way for them to get restarted. If that's the case, I'm interested. I will go ahead and sit down and watch a Swamp Thing movie. But in contradictory to that news, DC Comics has just shut down its Vertigo label, which is where actually Swamp Thing got its start, which begs the question, are they going with Swamp Thing or are they kind of backing away from the character? I personally would consider these two entirely separate entities of news. I don't think one's going to directly affect the other. How comic book sales are going and how a character will be received on the screen are actually not that related. If you look into the history of which comic book characters were popular before their comic book movie adaptations, you'd be surprised how many got their popularity from being turned into a movie, which is very counterintuitive. You'd think they'd go for the biggest names first, but due to studio politics that has not been allowed, the MCU would have probably liked to kick off with one of their more well-known heroes before Iron Man, but Iron Man's now one of the staples because of how well he did kicking off the MCU. There's a whole backstory there I could get into. I'm not going to at this point, but yes, Swamp Thing could be a good new start point for the DCEU, is the point of all of that. Next news! The Matrix rumors are starting to spread, and it seems the original directors, the Wachowski brothers, may indeed be back, but it has not been confirmed if this movie exists, whether or not it will be a sequel, a continuation of the story, or a reboot. This is one of the few times where after a large chunk of time goes by, I actually wouldn't want them to do a reboot. I would want them to continue the story. I know it didn't have the smoothest ending ever, but The Matrix to me for some reason doesn't feel like it should be rebooted. I feel like it should continue, but I would like to know in the comments down below, do you think if they do bring back another Matrix movie, should they reboot it or continue the story? And while you're down there, if you wouldn't mind leaving a like to support the channel and Fantasy News, I would appreciate it. I will add the caveat though on this story, it is for sure just a rumor, so be careful, don't go bragging to your friends, there's gonna be a new Matrix movie. We don't know that, though it's one of those rumors that seems likely, especially with how multiple sources are talking about it, and there are hypothetical leaks that to me feel like a studio testing the water. But in for sure happening news, confirmed without a doubt, Taika Waititi has signed on to direct the new Flash Gordon movie, which, oh my god, I was so not excited for a Flash Gordon movie, but now I am very excited. I love Taika Waititi's sense of humor, and I think he is perfect to capture some 80s camp that Flash Gordon for sure is to its core. He showed his ability with that in Thor Ragnarok with all the 80s callback atmosphere in that, so it shouldn't be that hard for him to transition into a full 80s world that is Flash Gordon. God, the 80s nostalgia in recent years has just been insane. I don't know what causes it, but I don't know if it's Stranger Things or no, it was even prevalent before that, but like 80s has just been banging in popularity. Stan Lee's first novel for adults will be published posthumously this autumn. I personally will be reading it largely just out of respect for the man. I love Stan Lee and what he worked on, and one of his final works being put out, I would love to read. I know there's some debate back and forth on whether or not an author's work that was not finished should be released, but everything I see here shows that largely it was finished, and I want to read as much as I can from this man who has influenced so many stories in my lifetime. In quickie news, George Clooney is set to direct and star in Good Morning Midnight, the adaptation. That's a story I'm not particularly familiar with, but cool. I'm glad for the fans. George Clooney is amazing. Star Trek Short Treks will be back with Ethan Pike and Rebecca Romijn. Dyslexia sucks, people. Trust me. For those of you unaware, short treks have been this thing CBS All Access has been releasing to try and get people to keep their CBS All Access subscriptions who are Star Trek fans, where in between the seasons, they're releasing these like mini episodes to check out. And they're actually, in my opinion, the best Star Trek content they have put out so far, so I'm actually pretty excited to hear this. Now, in this article and in several other articles, people are reporting that Mark Hamill wants to be in Netflix's live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And from that headline, you'd think he's like campaigning for it hard or really pushing, but in reality, there's one tweet There's one tweet where Mark Hamill said, I am available to play a role, and I'm not saying he will not end up playing that role, but what I am saying is it's unlikely, and he's not pushing forward or anything. There's just one tweet where he might have just half a thought put it out there. He says, I'm available for a role in a lucrative franchise. I wouldn't blame him for doing that. This seems to be a case of journalists trying to exaggerate or, hoping you just read the headline and not seeing the source for this is a tweet. In the last bit of quickie news, the Creepshow Reboot added a few notable names to its cast list, including Jeffrey Combs, Kid Cudi, and a few others. There's a lot of names actually in this article, and it's cool. I have never really been involved with Creepshow. I don't know it at all. I don't think I have seen anything of it before, but hey, if people recommend this reboot, I'll check it out. Let's just jump into it. Actually, in one more bit of quickie news, the Watchmen series at HBO has officially wrapped production. Cool. No, wait, sorry, there's another bit of quickie news. I'm sorry, I'm a bad journalist. Let's go ahead and say this is the last bit of quickie news, because it is. The Game of Thrones prequel has already leaked set images, and it looks like mammoths will be involved. I have a weird love of mammoths. They're so cool. I dig them. I don't know why, but this gets me so hyped for the prequel. Like, of all the things, for some reason, I'm down. If we can see a mammoth in a fight with a giant, I'm so there to watch that. Tom Hardy is officially back for Venom 2, and if you watched the previous episode of Fantasy News, Marvel has said it is open to having Tom Hardy play Venom within the MCU, which this begs the question, is he going to do one more Sony exclusive Venom movie, or will Venom 2 try to tie into the MCU, or will they wait for a Venom 3 to try to tie into the MCU? Will they completely reboot it? I don't know, but Kevin Feige did specifically say Tom Hardy as Venom versus Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I personally would like them to just completely reboot Venom and go with Tom Hardy once again. I know that seems strange to have the same actor play the same role in a reboot only years after the original. I didn't really like the Venom movie, and I think it could be done a lot better under the proper hands. Tom Hardy is amazing for the role, and having the entire MCU just not mentioned in the Venom movie directly or indirectly really kind of puts a weird taste in your mouth to have it suddenly be tied in like it's been a part of it the whole time. You don't think when a superpowered symbiote starts running around, people wouldn't like offhandedly reference other superheroes or something? No, just me? Okay. A Quiet Place 2 has begun filming, and I again am very excited for this. I like the first one quite a bit, and I'm hoping that this could actually kind of blossom into a nice franchise that isn't entirely reliant on jump scares, but also has decent world building, atmosphere, and yes, jump scares. There were jump scares as well. But it should be good, and I'm excited to see what they can still bring. As long as a lot of the original creative minds are behind it, I don't see a reason why I should be skeptical. And in the final bit of news today, and the biggest story by far, and the one we're going to spend the most time on, The Stand has had major casting leaks, and we are going to go ahead and dive on into these because boy oh boy has this been everywhere, and I really want to give my opinion. Just going through the names, we have James Marsden to play Stu Redman, Amber Heard to play Nadine Cross, Whoopi Goldberg to play Mother Abigail, Odysseus Young to play Franny Goldsmith, Henry Zaga to play Nick Andros, Greg Kinnear to play Glenn Bateman. Well, I certainly would not have called almost any of these names to be cast with any of these characters because Hollywood is huge, and anyone who could call this, wow, good job. I certainly don't have a problem with any of the castings. Most of them seem to be a rather good fit. I especially did like James Marsden to play Stu. He has the right look, and after watching him in Westworld, he certainly can play some odd roles. And no spoilers for The Stand, but Stu goes through some things. The most well-known name, obviously, from this leak has been Whoopi Goldberg, and No, did not see that coming, but it works. It certainly does. Two of the actors I have absolutely no experience with, and that would be Odessa Young and Henry Zaga. I'm sure they're great, they look the part, but I can't attest to their acting ability beyond just saying I'm sure that the people who are backing the freaking Stand adaptation know these people are talented. Greg Kinnear also has a bit of a warm spot in my heart. I really do like him as an actor. He gives off that great, like, comforting dad vibe presence. That's a weird way to put that, but I'm going to put it that way. And I can't wait to see what he will bring to the role of Glenn Bateman. To my Stephen King fans out there, which is a community I've certainly been cultivating recently, how do you feel about this Stand cast? There's been some grumbling online about different ages, but I find that to be ridiculous because the ages here are actually closer to the book source material than the previous Stand adaptation. Boom! Pretentious Stephen King snob info. And on a side note, Wheel of Time people, Greg Kinnear would make a great Tamil Thor. I'm just saying. This has been your latest fantasy news. Let me know what you thought of the stories in the comments down below. Please leave a like if you'd like to see fantasy news continue to grow and thrive here on YouTube, and subscribe if you want to stay informed and be a part of the news updates. I'm Daniel. You will only be seeing me and Daniel Green in the future. The rest are gone forever. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.